Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 14, and I am excited because I've been reading your work, and this is one of the times where being a teacher is awesome because I get to push you to go deeper into topics, and then I get to hear from you and your exploration, and then I get to later on use all of your ideas as mine. I'm just kidding. The first semester, after you write a great paper, I'll say, I had this one student who brought up tribes and said, and then a year later, it's like, tribes. And that's, of course, something one of the students here is writing about. I joke because we must have a sense of humor during this. But and I don't, because the research you're doing, right? I'm going to push you to do deep research. You're going to find some really cool stuff. And hell yeah, I'm going to share your really cool stuff with other people. That's what's so cool about being in college, right? Now, a couple of notes beforehand. Uh, I've responded to everybody's introduction and conclusion. I'll mention that in a minute. Um, if if social media has got you down, and actually I was taking a psychology class just last year, and they did research on all of them, Instagram, Facebook, I don't know about TikTok, but anyways, basically when it comes to your overall mental health, all of those make you feel worse except YouTube, which had like the slightest positive, right? So I know nobody's going to stop, but if you find yourself, right, spending way too much time on social media, here's a link to 10 different apps that you can use to both monitor how much, right? And different ones have different setups where you can block off time. I highly recommend this if you have a hard time getting your work done. You could block off time, which, like, hey, if I'm supposed to do homework from 4 to 6, you can have your phone actually shut off all those notifications. So there's that. And now this is available until July. If you're bored, if you have extra time. Okay, so if you are bored the early part of summer, right? We'll be done like by May 15th, around there. There's all of these, this is all free until July 31st. And there's a bunch of different courses. So if any of this stuff is interesting to you, I haven't taken one yet, but actually I'm going to do some digital marketing and I think in some organizational leadership development. It looks like they're about 8 hours worth of material, and you can do them, see the material. Maybe it looks like they give you a certificate at the end. I'm more interested in the knowledge than the certificate. But if you got some free time off and any of this stuff looks interesting and it might be valuable for your career, um, grab it. It's free. You'll have a certificate. You can put it on your resume. Finish your Comp 2 stuff first. But I was just shown this actually by my wife uh, today. And if any of that looks good, take it. It's free. Okay. So that was the mental health notes, right? Now, as you're writing your paper, have this bad boy out because these are your guidelines, right? And this is what I'm looking at. And right now, I feel like a couple people are trying to persuade me to move in one direction. That's not your job, right? Your job is to show us how complex the topic is. And I'm trying to give you some suggestions in the posts. But remember how, as you're reading The Righteous Mind, how he had an idea and it didn't kind of fit in the school and he got it from here. And there was just everything was bigger, more complicated than certain people were willing to admit, right? And that's what I want you to do. I want you to go past the here, I'm going to persuade you that this is bad or we should do this, right? It's like, no, show us how complex it is. Give us different groups and how they can look at that same thing, right? Differently. For example, to take invasive species, right? How some people will look at that and say the government needs to get involved, and other people will say, nope, right? Government don't tell us to do a thing. Probably not a great example, but it's not my paper. Your job is to find the great examples, right? Complexity, looking at it from different angles. This is the Dodge Durango, right? One door, no door, two doors, right? Depending on how you look at it. Make sure you are looking at it from multiple angles. If you have a hard time with that, ask me questions. I am here to help. All right. So I would print this thing out, have it next to you so you don't miss the obvious, right? And I put that right there. The other thing that sometimes comes up, if you're telling us something obvious, do you need to? Right? Like, say, for example, if I was writing a paper about satellites, you know, do I really need to say our cell phones use satellites? You know what I mean? Because, yeah, we pretty much all know that, or at least your college educated audience is going to know that. Hell, we all know that, right? So, think about where you're telling us something that we already know. This is one of the things that makes using a definition in your introduction, it's not a slam dunk, because if you define something that we already know, prison is a place where we lock up criminals. Thanks, I didn't know that. Of course I knew that, right? So you want to make sure, right, if you give us a definition, it's something unique about it that we need, right? Shapes things differently. If you're telling us something that we already know, ask yourself, why are you doing that, right? Homework, pause. No, I'm gonna go back to notes on thesis and introduction. When it comes to the introduction, remember, you need to get our attention, right? Because me and your mom and I are the only ones who are going to be reading this thing if it's boring, right? And if your mom won't read your papers, I'm sorry. That sometimes happens. Grab our attention. Give us a reason to think this is going to be interesting, right? The rest of the paper is going to be as interesting as the introduction. And if you have a boring introduction, that's telling us the rest of your paper is going to be boring. Nobody has a boring topic, right? You all have interesting stuff. Make sure that interestingness gets shared with us, right? Your introduction also needs to set up your thesis. The thesis being the main idea, that thing, that complexity on your topic you are exploring. That sentence should end your introduction. Your intro should set that up. So when we get to the end, we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That this is what's going to be talked about, right? When it comes to using you, always ask yourself, should I be doing this right now? Now, when you use a question, oftentimes that makes sense, right? What, even if you don't use the word you, you're even implying I'm asking you a question. That's typically okay. But you want to be very careful that whenever you say you are putting in the reader a place they might not agree. So you might say something like, when you're a mom, and I'll be like, well, I'm not going to be a mom. I don't have the equipment. So no, right? And so we can do things sometimes by putting somebody in a place where, say you love reading books, and you say something like, well, you love reading books, and the other person out there is going, no, I don't. Books are stupid, right? I've got YouTube. So beware the you. Only use it when you, number one, want to bring the reader in personally, right? And number two, it makes sense to bring the reader in personally, and understanding your reader is not going to be just like you, right? It's going to be a variety. It might be a man, might be a woman, might be somebody who does not identify with either gender, right? So how does the way you use you, right? Is that really going to bring the person in, or is that going to push them out of the paper? Yep, that was that. So, moving forward, homework for Thursday, I want you to keep going, get your word count up to 1,000, right? And I want you to find a documentary, right? And I've showed you videos on this, on your topic or something close to your topic, right? So maybe you are doing congenital heart disease and you find a documentary on some sort of other congenital disease. Oh, well, that might actually shed some light on your topic, even though it isn't exactly one-to-one. So be open to finding something very close. And then if you use YouTube, right? And I like this because you can find videos that talk about our secret marine base on Mars. Now, maybe I'm closed-minded, but I really think that's stupid. I just do. And you're going to have to go a long way to explain how this all works, right? Um, we got to get a private to Mars. Okay, so this is from the library, the crap test. You want to make sure your sources are valuable. Every source is going to have a preference, right? It's going to have an agenda behind why they're telling this story, what they're included. That's part of being human. So it's not like you should be reading this and thinking everything you get is, 100% it, because we know it's more complex than that. But you want to find a source that seems to be playing fair with the topic, right? And you're going to post in here, right? And this is for Thursday. And the post is put a trailer in or let us know what the documentary is. Give us 2 to 3 sentences on it, right? And then why do you think they're credible, the source, and what's the most interesting part of it? One of the places you can go and, yikes, is Canopy, right? Which I've shown you before. And I actually spent a half an hour over the weekend actually making a list of the different documentaries on different topics for my mythology class, because first 2/3 of the class are older mythology. We end with modern, but some of this is going to fit totally a lot of your papers. And I just want to give you an example of what's out there. If you want to look at consumerism, think about the American dream or satisfaction, overspent American. If you're looking at feminism, we've got red pill, which is a criticism of things that it misses. We've got some misogyny later on here, which is more of the things that why we need it. Myth of free markets, libertarian, I mean, you name it, there's a lot there. So whatever your topic is, you can log into Canopy, right, and put mental health, for example, and you're going to see, oh look, here's a bunch of different things on it, and now I can go look. I bet you most of these, I'll go half. Half of them will be boring to you, not relevant to your paper, right? The other half will have some sort of connection. And out of that half, there's probably 1 or 2 that will really help your paper. The other thing is when you're doing a search, if you don't find something like this, and I'm going to click on subjects, look at social sciences help, right? You can think about why I click on subjects. Maybe mental health isn't the right phrase, or mental health will get you this far, right? But maybe instead of mental health, maybe I want to look at psychology, right? Maybe a little bit bigger and say, oh, okay, imagine, I can use a couple different search terms to find something. Oh, look at this. So I'm just doing psychology. I have little bits of all your papers in my head. So um, one of your fellow students read Tribe, and it's talking also about the military, and now here's the psychological burdens of war, and so that might be something really valuable to that person looking at tribes. Think about soldiers becoming a tribe, and then you know well, when we talk about tribes, we can think about, oh, look, we both went to Century College. Is that a tribe, right? For some of us, hell yes, it is, because this experience was instrumental in moving us on to another place in our life, and we think it's awesome and it's worth it. And others of us will be like, oh, yeah, I showed up, I got my degree, or I didn't, right? So, sometimes, right, what's going to shape the group is going to be the burden, right, of being in that group. I digress a little bit, but just know Canopy has a lot of good stuff. Play around with your searches. Okay, so that's for Thursday, right? Homework for Monday is I actually will want, and we're going to have a post for this, a visual representation of what you got, how you're organizing your stuff. I'll say more on this on Thursday. This can include absolutely screenshots, right? But I'm going to also, I want you to be thinking about, as you find this information, what are you doing with it? How are you storing it in a reasonable way so you can find information and make connections? And so I'll talk more about this later, but think about Where you're keeping your sources. How are you organizing your thoughts? Old school is using note cards, right? That putting down, main ideas and then you can slide them around. Those are great for those of us who like concrete things, and it's also the 21st century, and so you can be making your note cards online. You can even color code stuff with Word. So there's a lot of things to go into. I'll talk more about that on Friday. But think about how you're organizing your work, and that will be due on Monday. And of course, by the end of the week, I'll want you to be up to 1,400 words, right? Ask me questions if you have them. This should cover it. I believe I've covered everything I wanted to. I have responded to everybody's introduction and everybody's one page on research. And everybody has a topic that will work. I think there's going to be some really cool stuff. And some of you need to move from just reporting what is to looking at the complexity of it. And if that is a little bit confusing, cool. That's okay, actually, right? I mean, to be confused and to struggle is actually where learning takes place, which is why I'm pushing you for the complexity, because I know pretty much all of you could sit down and do a research report and say, this is what it says, right? You can do that, but I don't want you to be a tape recorder, right? That just, oh, got this information, I put it there and I'm done. No, I want you to really, right, be coming in with different angles, right? Really push your thoughts on a topic. So you're not just writing down other people's ideas. You're looking at multiple views and then coming up with your own ideas on it that isn't just a parrot of one other source, but it's an amalgamation of looking at a source from multiple angles, and then you come up with your unique perspective, right? Because you aren't just parroting one source. You are looking at multiple sources and you are doing the synthesis of putting those ideas together in a way that makes sense to you, and then you make that make sense to us. All right. You've got work to do, and I'm here to help. Get going.